Data and Geordi weren't best friends until this Star Trek: The Next Generation Season 4 episode. When Star Trek: The Next Generation wrapped its 7-season run, one of the warmest, most enduring bonds in the series was the friendship between Lieutenant Commander Data and Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge. Fans came to know them as the inseparable duo in engineering, Geordi's dry wit and practicality balancing Data's analytical precision. Whether solving warp core malfunctions or debating the finer points of human behavior, they were the show's version of odd couple perfection. But if you revisit TNG's early seasons, you might be surprised. Data and Geordi didn't start off as best friends. They shared duty shifts, worked on missions together, and occasionally chatted about non-work matters, but their connection was more friendly colleagues than soulmates in space. In fact, their true friendship didn't crystallize until a specific turning point in Season 4, an episode where shared danger, mutual vulnerability, and a uniquely Trek moral dilemma finally brought them together. That episode? The Mind's Eye. And no, it's not just because of the espionage thriller plot, it's because of what it revealed about trust, loyalty, and how these two very different officers saw each other. The early days, functional, not familial. In TNG's first season, Geordi was still the helmsman, and Data spent most of his time at ops. They had banter, Data asked a lot of curious questions, Geordi occasionally humored him, but their real work bestie energy hadn't emerged. Even after Geordi transferred to chief engineer in Season 2, most of their on-screen interactions were highly technical. If you watched episodes like Elementary, Dear Data, or Booby Trap, you'd see moments of camaraderie, but not yet the deep mutual reliance that would define their later years. Part of this was the writers still figuring out who Geordi was outside of being the guy with the visor who fixes things, and who Data was beyond, the curious android who wants to be human. In those early seasons, Worf actually had just as many casual conversations with Data as Geordi did. The true best friendship hadn't yet been forged. The road to The Mind's Eye. By Season 3, the show started leaning into the idea that Geordi and Data worked exceptionally well together. In The Ensigns of Command, Data sought Geordi's engineering expertise. In The Offspring, Geordi helped Data's daughter Lal with her systems. Still, those moments were about competence, not emotional connection. Season 4, however, started giving the two more casual, personal exchanges. In The Wounded, Geordi was comfortable enough to lightly tease Data about his poker face. In Theory, Geordi seemed genuinely interested in Data's attempt at romance. These were little stitches in the friendship quilt, but they weren't the moment. The Mind's Eye, the turning point. The Mind's Eye Season 4, Episode 24 is best remembered as TNG's nod to the Manchurian Candidate. While en route to a conference, Geordi is kidnapped by Romulans and subjected to brainwashing. The Romulans use his visor to feed him hypnotic imagery and commands, turning him into an unwitting assassin aimed at destabilizing a fragile Federation Klingon peace. On paper, this sounds like a tense Cold War spy story, and it is, but hidden in its framework is the real story, how much Geordi and Data trusted each other by this point, and how that trust finally cemented their bond. The stakes of trust. When Geordi returns from his abduction, he doesn't remember what happened. Slowly, he begins acting off. His normal easygoing demeanor is replaced with subtle lapses, slight hesitations, strange oversights, and uncharacteristic moments of cold efficiency. To everyone else, these quirks could be chalked up to stress or fatigue. But Data notices. Data doesn't just notice, he investigates. And here's where the friendship seeds planted in earlier seasons pay off. By now, Data has spent enough time around Geordi to spot when his friend isn't quite himself. That familiarity, built over years of shared warp core crises and late-night repairs, gives him the insight no one else has. From observation to action, the turning point scene comes when Data pieces together that Geordi's visor may have been tampered with. Rather than reporting his suspicions to Picard and letting Starfleet security handle it, Data personally confronts the problem. This isn't just duty, it's loyalty. Data isn't trying to catch Geordi, he's trying to save him. And Geordi, for his part, doesn't respond with defensiveness or denial when Data approaches him. Instead, there's an unspoken trust. If Data says something's wrong, it's worth investigating. That mutual openness underpins what would become their signature working relationship in later seasons. Friendship in the face of manipulation. What makes the Mind's Eye different from earlier joint adventures is that Geordi is vulnerable in a way we rarely saw before. This isn't an engineering problem he can solve with a clever realignment of plasma relays. He's been psychologically violated, and his sense of agency has been compromised. For an android like Data, who often struggles with human concepts like empathy, this is a defining moment. He recognizes not only the tactical problem of crew member being compromised, but also the personal stakes his friend's life and reputation are on the line. He advocates for Geordi in front of the captain and crew, making it clear that what happened wasn't Geordi's fault. That's when their friendship stops being situational and becomes personal. Why this episode matters more than others. There are plenty of episodes where Geordi and Data share the spotlight. The Next Phase, Time's Arrow, and Descent come to mind, but those all came after The Mind's Eye. By then, the writers were already treating them as best friends. The Mind's Eye is the pivot point where that dynamic truly forms. Here's why. 1. It's about loyalty under suspicion. Geordi is essentially a security risk in this episode, but Data treats him as a friend first, suspect second. 2. It's deeply personal. The threat isn't to the ship at large at first, but to Geordi's autonomy. That gives Data's actions emotional weight. 3. It requires mutual vulnerability. Data risks looking biased in defending Geordi. Geordi admits weakness and accepts Data's help. 4. It shifts their relationship dynamic. Before, they worked well together because they were both good at their jobs. After this, they work well together because they know each other. The ripple effect in later seasons. After The Mind's Eye, TNG starts leaning hard into their partnership. Watch almost any episode from seasons 5 through 7, and you'll see that Geordi and Data are now default scene partners for tech-heavy plots. But more than that, they become personal scene partners. In The Next Phase, Season 5, Geordi's death hits Data harder than you'd expect from a supposedly emotionless being. In Time's Arrow Seasons 5 to 6, Data trusts Geordi to follow him across centuries. In Interface Season 7, when Geordi faces a family crisis, Data's quiet support is unquestioning. These later moments don't work without the foundation laid in The Mind's Eye. A friendship that's pure Star Trek. The beauty of the Data-Geordi friendship is that it's never built on the melodrama of falling out and reconciliation. Once forged, it's consistent, steady, and reliable, the kind of bond that's image is rare in television, where writers often mine friendship for conflict. Instead, their dynamic reflects one of Star Trek's core ideals, that understanding and cooperation across differences can yield something greater than the sum of its parts. Data, the artificial life form seeking humanity, and Geordi, the human augmented by technology, are mirror and sum W.